So it looks like JB can't figure out this crime thing, huh? All right. Like he's still popping off at the mouth. Let's see what they're talking about.
Off the Lake Walk and slams Trump. Real lives are being destroyed.
It's personal for one of our next guests who lost his 18-year-old little brother, Christian Caldwell, in a Chicago shooting. He was an innocent bystander. That was in 2022. That was a young man with dreams and college plans, just all gone in the blink of an eye. A story that we see far too often in that city.
Very
Still,
true.
no arrests have been made related to that incident.
Joining us now is author of The Day My Brother Was Murdered, Fox News political analyst Gianno Caldwell, along with former New York City Councilman Joe Borelli. Gianno and Joe, great to see you guys. Gianno, I'm going to start with you, my friend. I was at your little brother's funeral with you.
Yes, you were. Thank you.
What do you think, my friend, when you hear Governor Pritzker try to downplay the murders and the crimes in places like Chicago that got your little brother murdered?
I think insanity, which is what they've been selling in Illinois for many, many years.
God damn it. I already know what they're saying. Let me guess, they're calling him a black coon. They're calling him a sellout. They're calling him a crusty conservative. Let me guess, that's what they're calling him. Oh, they don't like when you talk like that.
In 2021, we saw 276 children shot in the city of Chicago, 16 and under. Just this past weekend, we saw 6 people murdered, including a 5-year-old, and 27 people shot. This is a national disgrace on every level. So while the governor says, Donald Trump, don't come to Chicago, many people in Chicago who've experienced this lawlessness, who've experienced this violence.
Why do we treat crime like it's a unicorn? Like it's supposed to be an unheard of thing to experience little to no crime. I get people say that's just not the way of the world. Criminals can only do what's allowed. There was a time the mafia ran rampshot over the entire American industrial industry. They put RICO out and they cracked the backs of the mafia, and they have not risen to that strength since then. They're still present, but they're nowhere near. They're a fraction, a shell of what they used to be. RICO was designed to prove to Americans crime should not be an act of a unicorn. Illinois participates in the crime. A lot of things get done by way of crime. I'm speculating here, but all of us have said and talked about this in our own private discussions. We've heard about the palms of politicians being greased, even though he's on the right now, Rod Blagojevich. Even though I believe, is he still alive? George Ryan, the original CDL seller, the original CDL hustler. Yeah. Remember that? Remember that guy? Mm-hmm. Good old Mr. Madigan himself, who just went to jail. Yeah. This is something that has been an ongoing issue in Illinois. Politics itself. Politics is one of the few places where you can be rewarded for doing a poor job. You can be promoted for doing a poor job, especially in Chicago.
Whose families, like mine, have been tragically shattered forever, are saying, Mr. President, please send us help. Because the city officials, the governor, and the state officials have done nothing to make our lives better. In fact, they made things worse with legislation and policy like the Safety Act, which allows for the elimination of cash bail in the state of Illinois.
That was one of the stupidest things they ever passed. Cashless bail. Sign on the piece of paper and promise us you'll come back to court. This was the stupidest thing, because what they tried to make the argument was bonds were often being set too high and disproportionately for those that were of color, Black, Latino people. The bond is supposed to be set too high if you do an egregious crime. Now they're saying, oh, well, they were getting bonds for things such as bags of weed and things like that. Okay, I get that. That kind of stuff can be worked out. But now what you have is nobody's respecting the law even more. Because I remember a time when I was growing up, even the crooked cop would tell you, if you lay a hand on a CPD officer, all bets are off. You and everybody involved is going down. We'll figure out another to flip and turn. Pause. Yeah, that's how that went. Not now. Now, CPD officers are struck down. 16 gun salute, that's the end of it.
Things must change in the state. Otherwise, it's over forever for many of the people that live there.
And they called that the Safety Act. Like, notice how they name things the opposite of what they actually are for political reasons.
Exactly right.
Orwellian.
You know, Joe, I want to talk about New York City for a moment, which is your neck of the woods.
That
There's
is
this
one
report
thing about
today in the New York
politics. We
Post
love
that
irony.
Zoran Mamdani, and certainly the Democratic Socialists of America, which is, he's, you know, tied to the hip with that group, they want to stop enforcing misdemeanors at all, sort of like make those crimes go away. What would that impact look like in a city such as New York?
Oh, it would be devastating. I mean, just think back 2 summers ago when we had riots on the streets and burglaries and breaking and entering of stores all across our city. There was public outrage by average New Yorkers, not just the leftists.
To do this would be very similar to what was happening in California. Until it was reversed, Governor Newsom had signed a law that states if you steal under $900 worth of items, you don't get arrested. You just fill out a police report and it's off to the next one. Hey guys, in the interest of maintaining truth and integrity, I wanted to make a slight correction. Under Prop 47, one could be arrested if they violated this particular law in California. However, the likelihood was much lower to be arrested, but one could still be arrested under Prop 47. However, those charges would no longer be seen as felonies, and you would only be charged by way of a misdemeanor. So what that meant was way more people were not arrested, and the penalties were reduced for certain offenses such as crimes of drug possession for personal use and petty theft, which the value did not exceed $950, which were now treated as misdemeanors and not felonies, which led to fewer arrests for eligible crimes in the years following the passage of Prop 47 over drug and property offenses, which also those charges fell quickly for those arrests as well. So I just wanted to make that quick correction. So you know what criminals was doing? They was purposefully stealing items that was below $900. But hey, I'm sure it'll work out.
Not the leftists that Zoran might count as supporters, but of average New Yorkers who live in every neighborhood. You know, the irony of all this and tying everything together is that.
Fam. Mamdani, you should have stayed home, man. You needed a spot for a 45 barbell and 2 45s. Fam, that's embarrassing. I get you're trying to show your youth and vigor. I think you did the complete opposite here.
2 years ago, Kathy Hochul, the Democratic governor,
look at that.
called in the National Guard to come on the subways in New York to address overwhelmingly the number of misdemeanors that are occurring there. That's actually one of the highlights of her tenure as governor because it was successful. Now to see these Democratic mayors and governors freaking out that a Republican president is using the National Guard in the exact same way is just unfortunate, and it's delusional. It's delusional that they haven't even realized that they have been unable to control crime in their cities.
You know, Gianno, the biggest lie from the left is that Black Lives Matter, right? The whole point from the left, they told us with.
Oh, she hit the nerve. You can't talk about the beloved. Oh, she hit it with the BLM. Who remembers that group? Understood the sentiment. But the execution? No. Matter of fact, remember all the people that started Black Lives Matter? How they went and bought multiple houses and ran off to the races? Haven't heard from them since, have you?
Soft on crime policies and defunding the police are supposed to make it more equitable for minority communities, but instead it's just gotten minorities murdered and killed in so many cities across America.
Exactly right.
So why are they lying?
Exactly right. And Well, I've come to learn after many years of being a conservative that more often than not, Black lives don't matter to Democrats. It's Black votes that do. And that's the unfortunate reality. They've used Black folks, honestly, in a way that I think is very derogatory, using race as a weapon.
There it is. The man is speaking gospel. He is speaking in tongues. Oh, he is speaking it. Keep using that race card. That is the go-to playbook for the Democrats. They will always tug on those emotional heartstrings by way of racism. I'm telling you, people keep ignoring me. I'm telling you, you can't see it because they're not as loud and boisterous about it. More and more, specifically Black men, are drifting away from the left. It's a fact. I'm trying to tell you the political climate is changing, particularly for men. But if you only live in the bubble of where you live and you only pay attention to what happens in your city and state, you will falsely believe that is what's happening across all 50 states. It's not. I'm pretty sure people are calling this man a coon 90 miles an hour because they don't know what else to say, because the minute you strike the emotional nerve and you don't stay in the pocket and say what people think you should say by way of the democratic belief, you are automatically a sellout. You are no longer thinking for yourself. That's what they will tell you. But as long as you're in that democratic machine, they will say you A-OK. You one of the boys. You're hip to it. You're woke. And trust me, I know what people mean when they say woke. The reason why it has become a negative connotation is because it got to the point where things were being shoved down people's throat to the point where it was just outright uncomfortable. That's it.
Against candidates who actually care about law and order. And that's oftentimes Republican candidates who want to ensure that their safety. What people don't really mention is a lot of the folks who are victims of violent crime happen to be African American. So wouldn't you think if they actually cared about Black lives, they would not have soft on crime?
I've heard the argument made that murder happens within the vicinity of where you live, which is true. White people kill white people. If it's a predominantly white area, so does Latinos, so does Blacks. That's true. But I'm just going to go ahead and say this. We kill each other for way more alarming reasons than other cultures do. I have yet to hear about a story in the news of one Latino killing another Latino because you stepped on his shoes. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I don't normally see that plastered over the news. I don't. I'm not saying stupidity doesn't happen. I'm just saying I don't see this happening all the time. We will break the allegiance to one another quickly. People say, well, you should stay on code. No. What I feel is that as long as we have this gang and drug problem in the Black community and we keep allowing this to be our forefront of the movement, we keep protecting the murderers and the criminals, because even white people call their people trash that do dirt. We don't. We protect them and lord them as heroes. Until we get out of that mindset, we'll just be forever complaining about how we're being done unjustly.
Tough on crime policies. What we're seeing in Chicago and in New York, especially if there's a socialist Democrat that wins, is George Soros' bidding is getting done. He did it with the prosecutors across the country.
Yes, he did.
That's why I started the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety at caldwellinstitute.org. Please support our efforts there. Because this has gotten to the point that lives are being lost at alarming rates because of policies that are being pushed by hard left folks who can give a damn about Black lives. And that's the honest reality in many cities, including my hometown of Chicago.
There we go.
Joe, very quickly, I want to talk about California. Governor Newsom and his press team putting out just a slew of tweets. They're kind of like on this binge, highlighting crime stats and percentages from what they're saying are red states. That's the point, to attack Republicans. But what they're actually highlighting in almost every case is high crime in cities run by Democrats, in many cases for decades. Are they doing this on purpose? Are they throwing some of these Democratic mayors under the bus, or are they just hoping that people are too stupid to realize that a red state does not necessarily control the local policing in cities?
Well, they're hoping that the public is stupid enough to think that, but everyone knows, that St. Louis and elsewhere are synonymous with Democratic mayors going back generations. I was chair of the National Forum of Republican Mayors and Council Members, and I actually think of my colleagues who were Republican mayors in Democratic cities. So when I hear Newsom say that, I think about Mayor Jerry Dyer of Fresno and Mayor Karen Go of Bakersfield, who are trying their darndest to eliminate crime in their communities, despite the best efforts of Gavin Newsom and the Democratic-controlled legislature, who constantly put up roadblocks and obstacles for them to do their jobs.
And by the way, we put up one of those on the screen attacking Josh Hawley in Missouri, saying, St. Louis. St. Louis has not had a Republican mayor since the 1940s, Governor Newsom, just as a little fact check for you.
See, that's what I don't like. This fast and loose with the verbiage. Newsom throws out there that there's all this high crime in red states. Stop playing on people's stupidity. Stop playing on people's ignorance. Because he knows how a state is ran and a city is ran are two separate issues. You go to Austin, Texas. Austin is definitely a Democratic city. 100%. It's basically the new tech bro place. Mostly all of them are liberals in Austin. It's a red state. The crime you're focusing on is in Austin, not the state itself. This is an unforced error. I don't understand why Democrats do this. They don't need to do this. If they just show themselves willing to get rid of the woke and the BS and step head on to the crime, it would be different. Give a recruitment reason for people to want to put the CPD or police uniform back on in Chicago. Give them a reason. Because when they feel, and when I say they, I mean officers, when they feel there's no backing, it's demoralizing. And they start to communicate that to the public. They communicate that to their wives and their husbands. And then it starts to permeate into the neighborhood. Because don't be fooled, a lot of these gangbangers have family members that are police officers. Let's not forget that. And they look at what the police officer, and they listen to what the police officer is saying. And they're saying, why would I want to be a cop? Look how depressed my uncle or my father is to be a cop. From my understanding, in the past 5 years, I've seen 3 recruitment billboards for CPD or Chicago Police Department to join the force. And they still can't get their numbers up. Nobody is flocking to the table. Or as soon as they flock to the table, they quit. Because once they see how politically connected everything is, people are like, for what? I'll just go make a TikTok, make a funny face to get paid $50,000 a month. Why would I deal with this? You have insulted, as a mayor, CPD to the point where they're so disgusted. Officers tell me quietly, hey, it sucks putting on this uniform, but it's all I know. Because you've made it so unpleasant. But one thing I can tell you, in the realm of crime, you're losing. And you're losing bad, by a mile. But keep going at this rate. You got it. Guys, like, share, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I'll catch you in the next one. It's about to get hot.